Big Buddy God did it again. You woke up on the right side of the dirt, so let's give God a praise. This is John Lakin and Friends. What's up, everybody? This is your boy John Lakin, and welcome to John Lakin and Friends.
Oh, we've come this far by faith. Yeah, and you know we need it. Thank you, Jesus. Oh, and we're trusting in His holy word. Oh, He never fails. Thank you, Father. Somebody lift your voice and say, can't turn around. We've come this far. Yeah. Oh, we've come this far. There was nobody but Jesus leaning on it. Leaning on the Lord. Somebody say He never failed. Thank the Lord. Wave your hand at the Lord. Can't turn around. We've come this far. Can you say it again? Say, wave your hand and say, Sean Bigby, that's a good testimony song right there. My God.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy John Lakin, and I wanted to take a moment to encourage you all to vote. November the 8th in Richland County is our time for us to vote. And I'm coming to you now to let you know that I am endorsing and supporting Hamilton Jacobs, not simply because he's my brother-in-law, but because Hamilton has committed to doing the work. He has been in the community. He opened and founded a foundation called the Bridge Over Foundation that has empowered our young people. We've seen incredible testimonials of the goodness that they have been doing in the community and around the greater Richland County area. So when you consider who to vote for in the Richland 1 school board seat at large, I want you to consider Hamilton Jacobs because he's a man of integrity, he's a man of character, and he's a man for the people. And I'm sure that he will represent us well. There has been a lot of things that have happened where we need to see some changes, and Hamilton Jacobs is the change that we need to see. Welcome back to John Lakin and Friends. I am so honored to have some incredibly reliable and great community leaders in the room with me. I'm going to start from one side. I got my brother from Nigeria. There is no other comedian like the Warnock himself. Akintunde Warnock, my good brother. How are you?
I'm good, John. I am not from Nigeria. I'll let you
He's from Savannah, Georgia. I consider him one of my uncles, a longtime family friend, city councilman Norman Jackson with us. How are you doing, sir?
County council.
County council. I'm sorry. Okay, let me do that one more time. Yes. I'm so sorry. All right. And, you ready, Shantae? Okay. And I have with us incredible family friend, long time. I mean, I consider him an uncle. He is also a great businessman, and he is our former county councilman, Norman Jackson, here with us. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great.
Good.
Nice to be here.
And then we have one of the most premier and profound leaders of our area, an incredible attorney, former military. I know him as the man that also carried and kept the body of JFK. Mr. James Felder, how are you, sir?
John, I'm good. Glad to be with you.
We're honored to have you. Good. And we have the darling of media in our city. She has done some incredible work, and I am super honored to have her on our show. Sister on point, Miss Cynthia Hardy. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you all for having me. I'm honored to be among the guests and everything. Thanks.
Yes, yes. So we're going to get right in. Everybody knows we're in an incredible political season right now, and we're having some life altering decisions that are being made as it relates to voting. So I just want to just take a moment and let you all share the importance of the black vote right now before we even get into the actual issues that we're going to be voting about. Mr. Felder, what's your concerns, or what do you see or observations about this election season?
I just hope we will do a better turnout, John.
Yes.
We got the numbers. We have over 1 million black registered voters in this state.
Wow.
In 1968, we only had 50,000 black registered voters and only 8 black elected officials.
Wow.
And 4 of them were in Eastover.
Hey, that's a great place. That's a great place.
4 were in Eastover and 4 were down in Beaufort. That was it for us.
Wow.
Then we started getting us registered to vote. And
Yes,
we
sir.
started finding candidates to run for office. So that's where we are today in terms of statistics. 1 million black registered voters,
Yes, sir.
928 black elected officials.
Incredible.
If we can get the black elected officials to do more pushing for turnout, we can
Yes.
do better. And we may want to talk about that a little later.
Oh, yes.
But that's
Oh,
where we
yes.
are.
And Mr. Norman Jackson, what are some of the things that you're seeing that has been hindering the black vote, and some of the obstacles that we're having to overcome as it relates to the black vote in our communities?
Well, I think some of the main problem is the communication, the education. I think the current leaders are not investing enough in the communities to educate the people on what's in their best interests. And so you have a lot of people just stay away and just stay home because they said, what's in it for them? Their vote doesn't count.
Wow.
So they have to spend more time with the grassroots on the ground,
Yes.
right? Speaking to individuals, to communities, right? To tell them about what's important and how to improve their quality of life, what's in their best interest.
And so how important is the grassroots efforts to seeing the difference? Because some people would think that it's all about the money. Some people would think it's all about the notion of being on national platforms or sharing your thoughts on famous places or even celebrity pushings. But how important is that grassroots foundation to getting the vote and seeing changes that we desire?
All elections are local.
Yes, sir.
And we don't do a good job of bringing the local people into the election process.
Wow.
People are working, they're struggling, they don't have time to follow politics day to day. They don't follow what's happening in the General Assembly day to day, or county council, city council. So somebody has to push them and inform them and put the information out there. And that's
Yes.
where we are lacking. My phone is being blowed up right
Come
now.
on.
People saying, well, who do I vote for? I don't know these people.
Wow.
Why don't they know these people? Because somebody has not been sharing with them information. So at the last minute now, they're trying to find out who should I vote for, where do I vote, and all of that. But
Yes.
there's an answer to that also. But it might be a little late, but at least there's an answer to it. Get your sample ballot.
Sample ballot,
Sample
yes.
ballot. Everything is on that sample ballot that you need to know. All the people that you can vote for,
Yes.
where you vote, what time you vote,
Yes.
they're there. And you fill out that sample ballot and you take it into the polls with you.
Yes.
That way you don't get confused with all the stuff that's on the ballot box there, and you think you're holding things
Yes,
up,
sir.
want to get out of there. So get your sample ballot. It's very simple to do.
Yes. And see, I actually heard Cynthia Hardy's show On Point on the radio this past week, and you all were talking about the importance of the sample ballot.
Yeah.
Miss Cynthia, I want you to share the importance of the responsibility of the media to help share some of the information that we're seeing from the candidates to empower our people to make educated votes. And see, and the other thing, even with what you just said, you know, you had, of course, the ship that blocked the docks that weren't able to get supplies back and forth.
Yeah.
You had a unexpected war that happened between Ukraine and Russia that affects the world globally, but on our levels, sometimes when people are looking for someone to blame for grocery store prices being higher or gas being higher, they're not looking at the broad spectrum of what is taking place. And so, Akintunde, you are an incredible entertainer. You've seen, how much have you seen that entertainment has taken a hit as it relates to this pandemic? Because the pandemic, it not only affected schools, it not only affected how we view politics, but it also affected a lot of our ways of providing for our families. So in comedy, what have you seen?
Well, entertainment definitely took a hit. I mean, of course, myself, I make primarily have made a living being a live touring artist. Of course, we couldn't tour, but what that forced us to do was to think creatively. So then we had to think digitally. We had to think about the internet, how to create these different platforms to be able to consistently distribute your message. Now we're doing virtual comedy events. We're doing metaverse, fully digital animated comedy events.
Wow.
And actually seeing great turnouts. And I think we have to take what we're doing in the entertainment space and these creative spaces and connect those dots to the political realm, to the community realm, and make sure that that messaging that is so critical lands and makes that point. And I think one of the great things what you're doing here, John, this is a conversation it's a multi-generational conversation.
Come on.
It's a multifaceted conversation. It's a multimedia conversation, right?
On.
And I think we need to do more of that. Like get young people, get the young brothers who may look like maybe, hey, you probably don't understand why your hair is purple and twisted this way and why you got all that jewelry on. But at the end of the day, we got to have those conversations so that they understand the perspective of Mr. Felder, Mr. Jackson, and understand the background, what Cynthia does, what John does. And I think if we can do that and explain the value of voting, explain the value of community organizing, explain the value of showing up, and vice versa on all levels, I think we could really take back, this voting cycle, some of these negative issues that are happening, whether it's shootings, whether it's jobless, whether it's homeless, whether it's fatherlessness. I believe we can have more conversations like this.
It can actually bring change.
Yes, sir.
And see, the other thing I was going to ask you all, and this is for the whole table, do you feel like the election cycle that we're in, the intimidation factors that happened in the 50s and the 60s, do you feel like they're trying to kind of rebirth themselves again? Or do you think that sometimes the opposition are using the same tactics to try to discourage the black vote?
Well, I mean, they're creating it. They're doing it now. They even changed legislation to sort of suppress certain demographics from voting.
Yes, sir.
So it's all nationwide. Every state is doing it now, right? So that's where education comes in again, that you have that right to vote, and you shouldn't be intimidated because someone tell you you're going to jail or you're going to check your record if you come out and vote.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
What we're seeing now, the intimidators now, we thought Jim Crow was dead. But Jim Crow is alive and well.
Yes, sir.
He wears suits and ties, and he has AR-45, AR-16s, and all of that. So we are going through what we went through. But this time around, we're in a better position to deal with it because we got guns now also.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Lord help them.
So it won't be exactly like it was last time, but it certainly is enough roadblock to slow us down. So we got to spend more time with our people, with instructions and educating and dealing with table issues that people understand.
Yes,
You know,
sir.
You talked about the situation in Ukraine.
Yes.
More grain comes out through Ukraine than any place else in the world.
Yes, sir.
You know,
Yes,
so
sir.
that's an issue we have to recognize and
Yes.
deal with.
Yes, sir.
So we got to do more at the local level with our folk, with our young people, exactly.
Yes,
'Cause they still can't grasp exactly what is going on here.
Come on.
Right.
And do you know how many young people, what would you say to encourage the young people that have lost faith in our voting system? You know, you talk to a lot of teenagers, you know, because when I was in high school, I remember after I graduated, I couldn't wait to get 18 so I could vote. I believed in the system, and I believed that I could be the one to help tip the balances. And of course, you realize that politics is politics. But what would you say to a young person out there to encourage them to realize that you may be young and you might not look like previous generations, like you said, but you have to do your civic responsibility, which is to help be accounted for and to vote to move things ahead. So what would you say to some young person who is needing encouragement in that regard, because a lot of them have lost faith in the voting system?
They have. We do not do a good job of teaching our history from whence we came.
Wow, come on.
And young folk don't grasp that. So you've got to almost force feed them with it. You can't let them walk out the door. You got to make them sit at the dinner table and listen.
Yes.
And you got to share that history. But first of all, you got to know it.
Yeah.
Okay. And so unfortunately, we don't have enough grasp on where we came. The old folk are gone. I say every time we have a funeral of an old person, you bury a treasure. You bury a library almost. You know?
Yes, sir.
So we have to do a better job of encouraging, informing, and demanding from our young folk get into the game. And that's what it is.
So would you take a moment just to share some of the stories that you actually lived through when you saw things back in the day? I remember you and Mr. Akatunde talking about the Carter. What were you talking about? The Carter campaign.
Yeah.
What was your question? Go ahead.
I asked him. As he's describing that, I'm thinking that if you put Dr. Felder here in front of someone like a collard green, who is a young hip hop artist and an influencer, and put them on TikTok.
Yes.
Having a conversation with each other. He's telling that same story, but in this non-traditional platform. That's how, in my opinion, that's how you can connect the generation. And you take that conversation up, and you're sharing a story that you're about to share.
Yes.
But you cut it up into 15, 30-second or 1 minute segments.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so you see someone like a collard green listening to this general in our community share his heart, opinion, and wisdom.
Yes.
To me, we have to do things, creative things to connect the generations, because we're in our silos, and we got to come out of our silos and get on one page.
In 1975, Jimmy Carter was running for president.
Yes, sir.
Vernon Jordan, my mentor, sent me and some others down to Mississippi to work Mississippi for Jimmy Carter. Charles Evers had just won the mayor's race. The brother Medgar Evers, who'd been assassinated several years earlier, was elected the mayor of a little town in Mississippi near Natchez. His incoming council persons, they were men of the soil. Okay. Many couldn't read, they couldn't write. Wow. They wanted to know how to read the legislation that they would be passing at city council. So we went down to do some teaching.
Yes, sir.
And the church that we had to go into was way back in the woods. But as we rode up that hill that day, and I can see it now, there were old men with shotguns on the road to protect us. Deacons of defense, they were called.
All right.
After 30 days, these guys were able to at least read, sign their names, and the town became what it is today.
Wow.
But that kind of story you don't hear too often. So I try to share that wherever I go to show whence we came.
Well, let's take it a little further. Why would they need deacons of defense?
They were worried about the Klan. The Klan was open in Mississippi at that point. This is 1969. They were still wide open, riding around with shotguns in pickup trucks and doing what some of these guys are now doing at these drop boxes, sitting in their truck with their AR-15, 16s, and what have you, trying to intimidate people from dropping their votes in there. So while we've come a long ways, we've come full circle. Come full circle, we're back to it again. So we have to be on guard for that.
Yes, sir. Miss Cynthia, you have any questions that you would like to ask?
No, I just think that all that information is so important. And I just think that whatever we can do to share those kinds of things. But I think that also, I try to say to young people when I find out that they don't vote or didn't, not voting hasn't changed the things that you don't like. So if not voting hasn't changed, then try voting.
Yes.
And so because the activism is important, you can't divorce yourself from the situations that affect you because they're going to continue to affect you. You know, so in these and as all of the guests and the hosts know, intelligent people say those kinds of things.
Yes.
You know, intelligent people who should know better. Try to make a case for not voting as if nothing will change. But there's so many examples of things that do change. And I think that once we've had a disappointment in the political system, then we're tempted to just divorce ourselves, just stop it, devoid ourselves of any association. So we have to fight that because what's happening right now in America in a lot of spaces is the majority population freaking out because it's being taken over by the minority population. It's called the browning of America. And so they're fighting in different ways right now. It's getting nastier and nastier and nastier. And it will continue to get nasty until that change actually happens because it's coming and they can't stop the wave.
Come on, that's powerful.
Let's get back to your original input that when you said, why is the black vote important?
Yes, sir.
It's important because white elected officials can count. Give you a Strom Thurmond story. Strom Thurmond used to say he couldn't say Negro. He would say the Negroes. We only had 50,000 black registered voters in 1967 when I came home to do the voter education project. We got 100,000 registered. Old Strom Thurmond all immediately learned how to say Negro.
Well, listen.
We got 150,000 registered, and Strom was sending out, my dear black constituents, service to you. True story.
I believe it.
We got 200,000 registered, and Strom Thurmond was the first of all of the Southern congresspersons to hire a black staffer.
Right.
And he hired a guy from Orangeburg named Tom Moss, who stayed with Strom for 30 years.
Wow.
And if you wanted something done, you didn't call Holland's office, you called Strom's office, and Strom was going to have Tom Moss from Orangeburg to take care of it. So votes count, and Strom learned how to count votes early on. So that's why the black vote is so important.
Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, like you said earlier, and Marcus Garvey said, people without knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots. And you have to give these demographics something of value.
Yes.
I've seen where in the past, you have people would wait 16 hours for a Section 8 voucher. But they cannot spend 1 hour in line to vote.
Come on.
Right? So you're saying how to encourage people to vote, or the education is something, a promise of a future. If they don't see something of value in the future, then they said, well, my vote doesn't count.
Yes.
So I think we have to find a way to really encourage them and excite them about, what's in the future for them if they vote their interests, what's in their best interest.
Yes. And I think it's very powerful to even discuss the notion of coming together and being unified. I think a lot of times we end up shooting ourselves in the foot because we end up having either multiple candidates who split our vote or we have multiple ideals that cause people to not decide to come together. So what can we do to unify the black voice in order for us to be able to let our voice and our vote go further?
We need to go back to some old-timey religious meetings.
Yes, sir. Talk right now. Talk right.
Okay. There was a time when every community had a black ministerial alliance.
Yes, sir.
And they met usually on Mondays.
Okay.
They had lunch at somebody's church or what have you. But then they coalesced and they decided what we should do here with this candidate, what we should do here. We don't do enough of that anymore.
That's true.
Everybody's Lone Ranger now, going their own separate way. But we need to get back to basics. And basic is pulling the community together, pulling the leaders together.
Yes.
That's so good.
And I think COVID caused the separation of the community.
Yeah, right.
Because we all were forced to be able to be in our own spaces and not be able to mingle and mesh together. And honestly, even though the pandemic is passing, there's still a lot of people who are still not really coming out of the home, who have not returned to worship
ready yet.
or returned to different spaces. So Akintunde, getting back to the young people,
Yes, sir.
what do you believe? Let's take it to the lowest level. As we approach school board elections, what do you believe that we should be looking for in the people who are running for school board?
People who know how to speak to multi-generations, people who know how to cover the educational needs, the community needs, and recognizing the areas in the families today that may be lacking, that we maybe took for granted in years past, that is simply not there today just because of the fragmentation and the breakdown of our community. And I think a big part of that is recognizing that young people need to understand how to listen to elders, and older people have to make sure to invest in young people. And if we can figure out how to do that, utilizing the various platforms that we have, utilizing and pulling from all this wisdom that we have access to. I've got 6 years worth of wisdom today in an hour-long conversation with these two gentlemen right here. And then you add the value of a literal leader, of a woman of God, media, and wisdom like Cynthia that in this room today. We have to pull all of that together.
Yes.
And we got to figure out how to have some hard conversations, some consistent dialogue, and utilize the various platforms. If we can do that, I believe, John, that whether it's a school board, whether it's the community, whether it's families and family values, that's not a Republican thing. That's not a right issue. That's a black thing. Okay, that's a God thing. We need to restructure and recreate the conversation for family values. TikTok, YouTube, Instagram cannot be the dictator and the values and create the value systems of our communities. We have to do that. But it takes investment. It takes conversation.
Yes. And even with what you're saying, TikTok, Instagram, it cannot be the illumination of our students either. That the parents and the family values, like you said, the parents have to take responsibility for their objectives and their, like you said, sitting down at the dinner table, having the hard conversations. Because if they don't have the conversations with this next generation, this next generation will begin to create a monster of raising itself. And having, we just had the death of the young man from Migos. Takeoff. Who is one, and this is the other thing that I was going to say. Our young people today are probably, especially working young people, are probably making more money than generations before.
Yes, sir.
That means we are more blessed than we've ever been.
Yes, sir.
But in a lot of ways, somehow we're more ignorant than we've ever been too.
Yes, sir.
And so I think that if we knew what to do with the power that we had. So even Miss Cynthia had a forum on yesterday calling Zoom to the Polls, I believe it was called. And it was a great forum on Zoom. And she had candidates from the Richland 1 School Board who were either currently on the board or going to be running for the board. And in the middle of that, Mr. Norman Jackson, you made a statement that really stuck out to me. And you were saying, you were encouraging them to day one, first learn the rules of the board and learn their actual power. I want you to illuminate on that so that we can know what you meant by that in that moment.
Well, a lot of time people run for office, and when they get in office, right, it's like they're lost. They've been influenced by so many different things.
Yes, sir.
But once you understand the rules and the policies of the office you take charge to do it, things come easier to implementing those policies and those vision you have to do.
Yes, sir.
If you have to rely on others to tell you, then you're not really doing the job. Right? So I've learned over the years, I mean, when I went on county council, I had people trying to tell me, no, you can't do this, you can't say that, right? For example, the county attorney was reporting to the administrator. And when I asked, why was that? They said, well, he was just told to do it. I said, no, that's not the law. The law says we hire the administrator, the attorney, and the clerk.
Come on.
And from this day, that's how it's going to be.
Yes.
So it took one person, because I knew the rules, right, to change something that they were doing, which was they were not supposed to be doing.
Yes.
So to be effective in anything, you always have to know the rules. It's just simple as that.
And it's just like in school. The first thing you learn, first day, every class I've ever been in, you learn rules and consequences. And I didn't want consequences. So I tried my best to put my mind on what the rules were. And Mr. Felder, you've so eloquently shared history. I want you to just take a moment to just speak to everyone. You know, Tuesday is the big day where we're able to all go out and have our voices be heard. I want you just to share from your heart to everyone, just encouraging them and letting them know that it's not too late, that now is the time for us to show up and come together to do
Thank
this.
you, John. You're absolutely right. I'm very pleased with the turnout so far.
Yes,
we
sir.
have fought for a long time to get this early voting. We've always had early voting, but it was absentee in person.
Yes.
Well, and with all kind of requirements and you had to wait.
There's
But
16
now
voting.
the legislature did approve the 2 week, and that's been so helpful. The numbers are really going through the roof in terms of those are there.
Yes.
Now, it's not too late. People still can vote early, right up through Saturday. And there are 5 places in Columbia where you can do it. So it's not that far away. You can do it downtown at 2020. It doesn't matter which precinct you live in, you can do it at one of 5 locations.
Yes, sir.
Downtown 2020, Hopkins.
Hopkins.
That's where I voted there.
That's a great place.
Your place down
Yes,
there.
sir.
Park Lane Road, the Adult Center, and then the Image Innovation Place. So no excuse. 5 locations that you can go to, and it doesn't take long. The lines are not long, they're moving, but
They're doing
they're
very
there,
well.
but the lines move right on through. And please bring some kind of identification. But the main thing is do not leave that polling place until you vote. If you don't have identification or anything else, you vote a provisional ballot so that you are in. I don't want you to take the chance of going back home and you get discouraged because you left that thing and something happened on the road you don't get back. So don't leave that voting place, early voting, or in your regular precinct until you have cast a ballot. Lives been lost. We need to thank George Elmore, the man who caused us to be able to vote in the Democratic Party primary.
All right, talk
and
about
suffered.
it.
He suffered.
About it.
George Elmore was a businessman in Columbia. He owned 2 Blue Ribbon cabs. He owned 2 liquor stores. He had a 5 and 10 store on Jervay Street. And he was a photographer. But when he filed that lawsuit in 1948, he lost everything.
Wow.
His wife had a nervous breakdown, lived in mental institutions the rest of her life, and he died living in his truck in 1959. He lost everything.
Jesus.
So if we don't vote for George Elmore.
Listen.
The man who opened it up for all
Come
of us.
on.
So that's where we are.
Powerful, powerful. And Miss Cynthia, what would you like to leave us with? I want to applaud you because you have been valiantly helping to get the word out. I went to another forum that they had at Bethel A&B, and you so eloquently was the moderator of that forum, and I saw you ask some incredibly powerful questions. So I want to ask you the same question that I asked earlier. What is your expectation of someone operating in that role of being on a board?
You know, I think there's a lot that we can learn from, past mistakes. I think that it's important that we recognize at the onset, if we're going to serve on a board, it's what Norman Jackson said a few minutes ago. We have to understand governance. And we have to understand day to day, and we have to understand the difference between governance, my role as a person on a board, and day to day, the role of the people that we hire to execute after the governance has happened. And those 2 things have to remain separate. If they don't remain separate, you get chaos. And so as a result of that, I think board members going into those spaces just need to focus on that and focus on the kids. Now, we also, when you say focus on the kids, I want teachers and administrators to know I'm talking about them too, because we have a terrible shortage right now of qualified educators in our public schools, and a number of our children attend public schools. And so it's important that people who vote know that you directly impact your children's future when you vote for someone on school board. That's really important. And, that's why I've, just been eagerly talking about those races as much as I can, because if you're going to vote for school board, you're going to go and you're going to vote for somebody else up and down that line. But you got to know that directly affects you. And if there's ever been an example of how something directly affects you, it's that. And, because our teachers deserve better treatment. Our teachers and our students and our staff deserve to be safe in their spaces. They also deserve to be respected. And a lot of that tone and tenor when it comes to what happens inside of the physical space of those buildings is
Yes.
set by what happens in those school board meetings. And
Yes.
so I just want to say that,
Mhm.
because but at the same time we have to make sure that we have qualified people and that we give those qualified people an opportunity and a chance to execute under sometimes the most challenging of circumstances. And
That is
so
very true.
so we just have to recognize how vitally important that is, and all of us take our roles and responsibilities, whatever lanes we're in,
Mhm.
very seriously, and take an authentic, sincere, dedicated, committed self to
Mhm.
those service positions because they're just that important.
Yes, yes, and many don't know. I actually am a teacher. I served up until this past year as a music teacher in Florence District 4. So on the ground level in the classroom, seeing the transition of the students and the trauma of the students. When I say trauma, you got to realize we've been in COVID, and you know how many people have died as a result of
Yeah,
COVID.
thousands.
These kids, it's more people dying now than we've seen in previous years, and these kids are having to shadow through grief. They're having to shadow through the traumas of different situations, like we talked about earlier with poverty and the poverty levels, food insecurities, things of that nature, not knowing if they're going to eat if they don't come to school. I've even seen it to the point where even sick kids would still come to school just so they could eat because they were afraid that if they didn't make it to school, they would not be able to eat for the day. And so being a teacher, I was going to say one thing I saw that was very frustrating as a teacher was pandemic teaching did not allow us to have real progress because virtual teaching, look, you had gym teachers trying to teach physical education through the computer.
Wow.
You had musical teachers trying to teach singing with a delay through a computer. You had teachers trying to govern. Now, if you think having 25 and 30 students in a classroom is something, having that on a computer screen is a whole nother monster. Not to mention technical, all of us work in media, we understand technical difficulties and how things happen. And so one thing that I would say is, how do we keep the teachers encouraged so that they can run the race faithfully? Because they are navigating waters that have never had to be navigated before. Either one of you can actually respond to that if you desire.
Great teachers. We have great teachers if we give them the resources to do the job. During my day, segregation, black teachers didn't have the resources and didn't get the same pay. But they did a heck of a job with us because they were committed to teaching us. They were committed to lifting us up. Today, it's hard to keep good teachers because low salaries. And now you got all these threats in the classrooms and shootings. So we're at a place we've never been before. So we really almost got to start over again.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
yes, sir.
let me just say this while it's on my mind about Clarence Thomas, since he's been in the news a lot.
Yes. yes.
Uncle Clarence.
My God.
In 1991, when Thurgood Marshall had retired, he did his last interview with CBS, and he looked right in the camera when the reporter asked him, said, "Mr. Marshall, what do you think about your replacement?" And he looked right in the camera and he said, "A black snake will bite you just like a white snake."
Wow.
Was that prophetic?
My
That is prophetic.
God.
And he said no more after that. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
That was,
Wow. Wow.
I enjoyed everything about that.
Profound.
As we bring this incredible conversation to a close, I want to take a moment to thank you, Mr. Felder, for your years of service.
Yes.
Would you just take a moment and let the people know? Let's talk about this book that you have. One of your many books, because you've written so many, but let's talk about the JFK book, because that's the one that I know of personally that we've spoken about.
And it was my first book also.
Wow.
It came about as a result of my participation in the Kennedy funeral. I was a young sergeant about to get out of the Army at that point, and he was assassinated that Friday. I was on leave because I wasn't going to make the Army a career when it happened that Friday afternoon. So I got a call from my commanding officer saying, "Your leave's been canceled. You need to come out here, go to Dallas to pick up the president's body." That's how it started for me.
Wow.
By the time we could get together, find transportation, get to Dallas, We were at Andrews Air Force Base. Lyndon Johnson was getting the hell out of Dallas. He didn't know what was going on. Kennedy had been killed. Connolly, the governor of Texas, had been shot. So he took the oath of office on Air Force One with Jackie Kennedy standing beside him. So I went back and captured that in the book because everybody would say, how did you, little black boy from Sumter, South Carolina, get selected to head Kennedy's funeral? Right. But that's what happened. I just happened to be the senior person for funerals at Arlington Cemetery on that day. Wow. So I finally wrote about it. And so the book is out. It's called I Buried John F. Kennedy. And I talk about how we picked the body up from the airport and how I witnessed the autopsy, I witnessed the embalming and the changing of the caskets and all of that. And then I left the Army.
Now, why did they have to change the casket?
Handle got broken on the one that came up from Dallas.
Really?
When we tried to get it off Air Force One, we wondered what the problem was, but there was a broken handle. So they had to get a new casket, and that casket was selected at midnight. Miss Kennedy would not leave the hospital, so she sent 3 of Kennedy's aides to pick up a new casket, and they got this huge African mahogany casket that weighed 1,800 pounds.
Wow. Now, how many of you carried this casket?
Well, we had to add 2 people to the team. Started off with 6. Wow. We had to add 2 more to it.
Yes.
So after all that happened, and for 20 years, people would ask me, how did you get selected? So I wrote the book, I Buried John F. Kennedy, to kind of fill in all the holes there on it. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And the last thing I want you to do is I want you to share a little bit of your professional history because, of course, we know you're an attorney and you're also a professor. Just share a little bit.
Well, I graduated from Clark College, Atlanta, great Clark Atlanta University, and then Howard Law School, and came back home. Vernon Jordan brought me back to South Carolina to do voter registration.
Wow.
And in an 18-month period, we were able to register 200,000 black folk.
Wow.
And we went from 8 black elected officials to what we have today. Also, I taught at Allen University. I practiced law. I was the first black assistant solicitor in the state. And now, in my old age, I'm writing books and trying to preserve the history at my high school in Sumter that we own. The alumni purchased it.
Yeah.
And we've got a great museum over there. So I invite y'all to come over and visit it sometime. Cynthia was in Sumter the other day, but she didn't know about the museum. Otherwise, she would come visit it.
Wonderful.
Zim, I just didn't know where it was, so I knew it.
Okay.
Yeah. And Mr. Norman Jackson, of course, we know that you're from the island of Jamaica. And you have, first off, I got to say this. I frequent this incredible restaurant that you own. What is it called?
Carolina Sunsplash.
Carolina.
At Mobay's.
At Mobay's.
Let me tell you something. There's some good food. I go and get me some curry chicken down there. And give me some cocoa bread. I promise you.
Okay.
Cocoa bread is Jamaica's version of cornbread.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So you know. But let's talk about a little bit of your educational background and what all you did, because you have had quite a career as it relates to politics in our area.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Jamaica in a political family. Right, every heads of state visit Jamaica. I was at the dining table.
Wow.
Right. Short story, I was on the Olympic squad for Montreal, 76, and run the 400 meters, one of the fastest in the world.
Okay.
Drunk driver crashed into the car, broke my neck, didn't make it to the Olympics.
Wow.
I got depressed and decided to disappear.
Yes.
And I had family and friends in New York and Miami. I said, I'm going midpoint, so I don't see anyone I know. I'm going to Columbus, South Carolina.
Listen.
My father said, boy, you're crazy? I said, that's where I'm going.
Wow.
I came here, didn't know East, West, I didn't know anything.
Wow.
But I was so depressed. I had like 17 scholarships. And I couldn't take my athletics scholarship. So I decided to come here, disappear, and end up in Hopkins.
That's a great place.
Yes, and I've been there all these years.
Yes.
But because of my background, I grew up in politics, right? When I saw the need for people in the community to get involved, that grassroots and that what I grew up with, right? I just jumped in, and it was just natural for me to get involved.
Incredible.
Right, so that's what it happened.
Incredible. Wow. Akintunde, we have been friends. You're the only person in the world who calls me Jack Lakin. Jack. Because we learned that, John McCain, they call him Jack because Jack is short for John. I never knew that until I met Akintunde. We have seen
Same thing, John Kennedy, Jack.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And I'm Jack.
Yeah, so from
Jackson
now on,
Jack.
this is Jack Lakin and friends. But we've seen you do some incredible work with the Monique Show and with you being a writer for so many comedians all across the land and country. Just touch on the importance of having Christian integrity concerning your creativity.
Yes, sir. Thank you, John, for the accolades, and thank you for that question. I think you're a great example of that.
Wow.
And you're a man of integrity, and you come from great people.
Yes, sir.
Pastor Lakin, co-pastor Lakin, they did a great job raising you. And I think we have to learn as a community, as the African American community. I think one of the biggest things we can learn is the value of giving honor where honor is due. And I grew up in the barbershop, so I was a master barber. I got a job in the barbershop when I was 15 years old. So I spent 15 to 21 cutting hair in Harris Brothers Barbershop in Savannah, Georgia on Montgomery Boulevard. And I got a chance to listen to the most rich conversations. But the biggest thing is I learned when to shut up and listen.
Come on.
I learned when to be quiet and not interject myself into a conversation until somebody turn around and ask this young 16, 17-year-old guy a question. And I think we have to learn to do that as a community. I think we have to learn to honor our elders. What rich history that we're witnessing live in person right here, right now. We got to make sure we don't wait to the unveiling of Cynthia Pryor Hardy's statue however many years from now to give her flowers. We have to do that now. And one way you can do that is by listening. So if we can do that, we can figure out how to gain Christian integrity by listening to people who have it and who maintain Christian integrity. I think that's how we fast forward our community. That's how you grow as a person. If you got to learn, experience is the best teacher, but it don't have to be yours. So if you can listen to people who have walked this walk, whether it's a financial walk, a marital walk, a parental walk, a political walk, civic walk, social, there's so many things for us to learn. But if we only spend time looking down at our phone, looking at our tablets, dancing in front of TikTok videos, why I see the value and some value in all of that. You got to make sure that we give honor where honor is due. Because the same people who dishonor want honor.
Often. And that's not how life works.
That's not how life works.
And I heard a preacher say that this week. He said that that honor leads to longevity.
My God.
Because it says honor your mother and your father that your days may be long.
Yes, sir.
So you extend longevity as you honor. So even in this moment, we take a moment to honor you and to say that you have an incredible event happening this weekend.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about that. Where is it going to be located and what are you doing?
First Sundays at the Britt Event Center located at 533 Clemson Road.
Yes.
And so make sure you come out and have a good time. The only bad thing about coming to the First Sundays is that you may not be able to hear the entire On Point with Cynthia Hardy. But if you listen to On Point,
while you're on your way,
as you're pulling up into the parking lot. But it is a wonderful event. We get the chance to have a good time. So whether you want to network and meet great people, or you want to have a date night out for you and your boo, or if you want to bring your mama. I see sometimes we look at the table and it's mom, grandma, and the kids and dad all at the table laughing together at a comedy show. It's one of the rare opportunities we have at First Sundays, and I'm glad that we do it. And thank you for allowing us to talk about it here on your amazing platforms.
Now I'm gonna get to Miss Cynthia. Miss Cynthia, again, you're such a joy. I remember even when I started my television show, you've been so encouraging through this entire process, and you've been such an example for all of us in media as to how to be integral and graceful and do this in a way to empower. So I just want you just to take a moment just to let us know about your show and your platform, On Point with Cynthia Hardy. Where can they find you?
Thanks for that question. I've been in the business over 30 years now, and I started out in Birmingham, first on radio doing morning drive news, and then several years in television news, doing news every day and anchored on the weekends, and decided that I wanted more control over my own likeness. And so I got out and got into PR. That brought me to South Carolina, and decided that we wanted to have our own voice, and we wanted to be able to bring a message that was carefully put together with the perspective for African-American people, but should have an appeal to the overall community. Started that in 2004, so we will be 20 years old in 2024. And so we're excited about that. And we were then committed and still are committed to making sure that we present quality information to the African American community, primarily about the African American community. But we want everybody to consume it, and everybody out there that you got on the panel, they've been guests on our show, and we just appreciate very, very much, the fact that newsmakers and general public in general seems to have shown us love for all these years, and we just appreciate it so very much.
Incredible, incredible. So everybody, you have heard from multiple generations. You've heard stories of here and now and back then. A great time for us to know that we must use our voices to vote. I need you to find a way to get your sample ballots. Find a way. Could you tell us the website one more time for sample ballots?
scvotes.org. scvotes.org.
Yes, scvotes.org. You got to get there. Get your sample ballot so you can know who to vote for. And I want you to know that we are encouraging you all to vote, but listen, make educated decisions.
Yeah.
Understand that these offices, that they have vigorous schedules, and they have to find ways to do more than just be in boardrooms, but they have to be on the grounds having interaction with the people. So as you select your candidates, make sure you select people who will greatly represent and share our hearts and our concerns in order for us to see those changes that we desire. You are the change that you want to see. There's so much more to come after this. We want to thank Akintunde.
Thank you, sir.
We want to thank Mr. Norman Jackson. We want to thank Mr. James Felder. And we want to thank Ms. Cynthia Hardy for being on John Lakin and Friends. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's so much more to come after this. What's up, everybody? It's your boy, John Lakin, and I wanted to take a moment to encourage you all to vote. November the 8th in Richland County is our time for us to vote. And I'm coming to you now to let you know that I am endorsing and supporting Hamilton Jacobs, not simply because he's my brother-in-law, but because Hamilton has committed to doing the work. He has been in the community. He opened and founded a foundation called the Bridge Over Foundation that has empowered our young people. We've seen incredible testimonials of the goodness that they have been doing in the community and around the greater Richland County area. So when you consider who to vote for in the Richland 1 school board seat at large, I want you to consider Hamilton Jacobs, because he's a man of integrity, he's a man of character, and he's a man for the people. And I'm sure that he will represent us well. There has been a lot of things that have happened where we need to see some changes, and Hamilton Jacobs is the change that we need to see.